Imagine opening the Bible and encountering a figure who seems to appear out of nowhere. No genealogy, no recorded birth, no explanation of where he came from. And yet, this mysterious figure commands the respect of one of the greatest patriarchs in biblical history. That figure is Melchizedek. And his brief appearance in the book of Genesis has puzzled scholars, theologians, and historians for thousands of years. Because according to the story, this unknown king-priest meets Abraham after a victorious battle. He brings bread and wine. He blesses Abraham. And then something extraordinary happens. Abraham, the man chosen by God, the father of nations, gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything he has. A tithe. But this raises a fascinating question. Why would Abraham, the central figure of the covenant, give a tithe to someone whose origin we are never told? Who exactly was Melchizedek? And why does he appear in the biblical narrative with such quiet authority? To understand the mystery, we must first look at the world Abraham lived in. This was long before the laws of Moses, long before the priestly system of Israel. At that time, there was no formal religious hierarchy, no temple in Jerusalem, no tribe of Levites designated as priests. Yet suddenly, this man appears described as both king and priest. The text calls him the King of Salem, often associated with the ancient city that would later become Jerusalem. But the more intriguing title is his priesthood. The Bible calls him a priest of the Most High God. This means that before the official priesthood of Israel ever existed, Melchizedek was already serving as a priest. And that immediately challenges the later structure of biblical authority. Because according to later law, only members of the tribe of Levi could serve as priests. But Melchizedek was not a Levite. In fact, he lived centuries before Levi was even born. So here's the paradox. How can someone serve as a priest of God before the priesthood was established? Was Melchizedek part of an older spiritual order that existed before Israel's religious system? Or does his story hint at a deeper layer of biblical history that most readers never notice? The mystery deepens even further when later biblical writings revisit his story. In the Epistle to the Hebrews, Melchizedek is described in astonishing terms. He is said to be without father, without mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days, without end of life. Now, this description has sparked enormous debate. Was the writer speaking symbolically, or was he suggesting something far more mysterious? Because every other major figure in Genesis comes with detailed family records, genealogies are central to the Bible's structure, yet Melchizedek arrives with none. No lineage, no recorded birth, no recorded death. He simply appears and disappears. Which leads us to another logical question. Why would the biblical narrative include such a figure at all? If the priesthood of Israel was meant to come through the Levites, why introduce a priest who predates that system entirely? And why would Abraham honor him? One possibility is that Melchizedek represents a universal priesthood, one that existed before the boundaries of tribes and nations, a priesthood not defined by bloodline, but by relationship with God. Another interpretation suggests something even more symbolic. Some theologians believe Melchizedek was meant to foreshadow a future spiritual authority that transcends traditional religious structures. But even if we set aside later interpretations, the story itself leaves us with fascinating questions. Imagine Abraham returning from battle, victorious, powerful, surrounded by allies. Then suddenly this king-priest appears. He blesses Abraham, and Abraham responds by giving him a tenth of his wealth. That gesture reveals something profound. In the ancient world, giving a tithe was a recognition of spiritual authority. Abraham was acknowledging that Melchizedek held a higher sacred role. But how could that be? Abraham was the one chosen by God, so why submit to this mysterious priest? This moment suggests that Abraham recognized something unique about Melchizedek's authority. Something older. Something perhaps even more ancient than the covenant that would later shape Israel. And this raises another intriguing possibility. What if the biblical narrative is preserving the memory of a spiritual tradition that existed before Israel itself? It's a priesthood that was not tied to one nation, but to a broader understanding of the divine. If that were true, then Melchizedek represents more than a historical figure. He becomes a bridge, a connection between early humanity and the later religious systems that would emerge. But the mystery remains. Where did he come from? Why does the text give us so little information about him? And why does he disappear just as quickly as he appears? Some readers see Melchizedek as a symbolic character, a literary device meant to highlight the importance of blessing and divine authority. Others see him as a real historical king-priest whose story was only partially preserved. And still others believe his appearance hints at something far more mysterious within the biblical tradition. Perhaps an ancient order of spiritual leadership that existed long before written law. But maybe the most fascinating aspect of Melchizedek's story is how it challenges assumptions. We often imagine religious systems developing in a straight line, from simple beginnings to structured institutions. But the presence of Melchizedek disrupts that pattern. It suggests that sacred authority might have existed outside the official systems we know, outside the tribe of Levi, outside the temple, outside even the nation of Israel. And that leads to a final question worth thinking about. If divine authority could exist beyond established institutions in the ancient world, could it still exist beyond them today? Melchizedek's story may be only a few verses long, but those verses open the door to one of the most fascinating mysteries in biblical history. A king with no recorded origin, a priest before the priesthood, a blessing that even Abraham recognized, and perhaps a reminder that some of the most powerful figures in ancient history are the ones whose stories remain unfinished. If you enjoy exploring the hidden mysteries, paradoxes, and logical questions buried inside ancient biblical stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the smallest passages in Scripture reveal the biggest mysteries. Sometimes the most mysterious character in the Bible is the one who appears for only a moment yet changes everything.